Hi everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited to share two cards with you today using the new Piggie Background Stamp. I wanted to show two different ways, one with a traditional A2 sized card, and then also how to get more use out of this particular background stamp and turning it into a slimline background stamp. So for the first card, which is going to be the A2 sized card, I stamped the Piggie's background onto a piece of Cougar Super Smooth cardstock using Memento Tuxedo black ink so that I could color in all of those little piggies with my Copic markers. I am only going to share how I colored a couple of the pigs because there's a whole lot of pigs on that background. I did want to have some different pigs in the background. So the first one that I colored is with gray markers, and I wanted the little pig to have some spots. So I started out with W6 and just did little scribbly marks just to make sort of wonky looking spots on the little pig. I blended that out with W3, and then I blended out a little more with W2, and then I finished up with W0. So that is how I colored all of the spotted pigs. And as I colored different spotted pigs, I didn't try to make all of them look exactly the same. I tried to move the spots around a little bit so that each of the pigs would look just a little bit different. And there were a couple of the pigs where I did some spots on them, but I used a lighter gray marker and then went over the gray marker with the pink marker. I'll make sure to have all of the markers that I used listed in the description box below for you. For the pink pigs, I used quite a variety of different pinks because again, I wanted to have some of the pigs a little bit darker pink and some of the little pigs a little bit lighter pink. And I even brought in some of the E markers because they have that pink fleshy pig fur tone. When I was coloring in the pink pigs, I did concentrate my darker areas on the outer edges of the pig and also where the shadows would naturally occur. So if there was a little pig in front of a pig, I would concentrate that darker color right behind that pig that's in front of the little pig. And I also made sure to add a little bit of a shadow underneath his little snout, and then I would blend out with my lighter colors. And again, I tried to make the pigs look different from each other. So the shading would be a little different on some than others. I would use the darker color a little bit more on some of them, and then I would use it a little bit less on some of the others. So moving right along, now that I have all of my little pigs colored in, I did want to fill in the white space in between the little pigs, and I wanted it to be a bright, dark color. If I know that's kind of an oxymoron, but I wanted to make sure that it really made those little piggies stand out. So I just used one marker, which was B69, I think. Again, I'll have all of the markers listed below for you. And just colored in between all of the little pigs, which it didn't take that much time because the spaces were so small and I didn't have to worry about doing any shading. Once I had the background all colored in, I set that aside and then I used the Comic Speech Bubble die set to cut out a little speech bubble, and I used sentiments from the Wrinkles stamp set and just stamped that on my word bubble, and it reads Snorts and Kisses. I did trim my little piggy panel down to just slightly smaller than 4¼ by 5½, and I die cut a piece of blue cardstock using the new Wonky Windows 4 die, and I adhered that to my little piggy background with liquid glue. Then I had to decide where I was going to put my little speech bubble. Once I figured out where that was going to go, I used some foam squares on the back side of my speech bubble and adhered that in place. And then I used a liquid glue to adhere the stamped panel to the front of an A2 sized top folding note card. And the new Wonky Window 4 die is 4¼ by 5½. So it covers the entire front of an A2 sized card. And that finishes up my first card. Moving on to my second card, as I mentioned, I wanted to use the background and turn it into a slimline background. So I started out with a piece of pink cardstock, and it's cut to 4 by 8.5. Before I inked my stamp, I placed my cardstock on top of the stamp and used a pencil to make a mark at the very bottom of where the stamped image ends. I didn't go to the very bottom of the actual stamp, just where the image ended. After I had my little pencil mark on my piece of cardstock, I inked up my stamp really well, placed my cardstock on top of the stamp, and then used a piece of scratch paper to rub over the top to make sure that I got a nice clean impression. To stamp the bottom part of my slimline piece of cardstock, it was easier for me to turn the stamp sideways. Then I re-inked it. Then when I placed my cardstock on top of the stamp, I lined my pencil mark up with the top of the stamp where the image starts, and again put a piece of scratch paper on top of that, and then rubbed over that again to make sure that I had a really good transfer of ink. Next, I decided to use this super cute little party pig stamp, and this stamp is available both cling mounted and digital. And I did most of the coloring off camera. What I really wanted to show here was how I got the balloons to look transparent. So for the teal balloon, because it's behind the other balloon, I just continued the line, like the natural outline of the balloon, using my darkest teal marker. And then I just started to color in and concentrated my darkest color on the very bottom of the balloon and then out and around the edges. And then I moved in with my lighter colors, and I tried to leave a little bit of a highlight in the top right-hand side of that balloon. Once I was done coloring in the teal balloon, I grabbed my YG markers and I did the same technique where I started with my darkest color at the bottom of the balloon and kind of went up and around the sides, leaving the center of the balloon a little bit lighter just to maintain that transparent look. And I am coloring directly over the teal balloon with the YG markers so that it really got that transparent look to it. To finish up the slimline card, I die cut a piece of black cardstock using the Slimline Birthday Scallops die set. And I did trim down my little piggy background panel to just slightly smaller than 3 1/4 by 8 1/2. I used liquid glue to adhere the black frame to my little piggy background. And then I used the stitched and pierced circles to die cut a black circle. Played around with the placement a little bit to make sure that I had it far enough down, but I also wanted to make sure that my little pig didn't hang off the edge too much. I used liquid glue to adhere my die cut circle, and then I used my scissors to trim off the excess part of the circle that was hanging off the edge. Next, I adhered that panel with my tape runner to the front of my note card, which started out at 8 1/2 by 7. I scored it at 3 1/2 on the 7-inch side, so my finished card is 8 1/2 by 3 1/2. Of course, I wanted to pop up my cute little party pig, so I used some foam squares for that and adhered that to the front of the card. For the sentiments, I wanted to have a little bit of a play on words, so I die cut the word celebrate from the Celebrate Word and Shadow die set from lime green cardstock, and then I die cut the shadow from black cardstock. I adhered those together and then used liquid glue to adhere that to the front of the card. Now the play on words, instead of having it read Celebrate Big Time with a B like boy, I decided to have it read Celebrate Pig Time. To stamp the words Pig Time, I used the Alpha Doodles stamp set, and I just used black ink on some lime green paper, and then I did cut those out by hand. And to get the space cut out in the center of the letter P, I just used a craft knife for that. When I put them on the front of my card, I wanted them to be kind of cattywampus, so I wasn't too worried about getting those lined up in a straight line, and I used liquid glue to adhere the letters in place. And a final touch was, of course, I had to add a little bit of sparkle to my balloons, so I used my Wink of Stella glitter pen for that, and that finishes up my second card. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, we'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.